from Abuja.
Thank you for being a part of our show. We appreciate you. I am Magnus Packel, and this is Magnus Packel GVA. As you know, it's all about the human struggle to raise the level of living. That's what it's all about. In view today, electricity supply and economic competitiveness, as we talk with Dr. Ransom Owen, the former chairman and CEO of the Nigerian Electricity and Regulatory Commission. But before that, in our quick view, we take a look at how scratched-up cars can tell a lot about a city. Stay with us. There is a crime-fighting theory called the broken glass theory. The theory holds that people are more likely to commit crimes in neighborhoods that appear unwashed and uncared for by residents and local authorities. Basically, criminals are emboldened by the lack of social control. The spirit of the theory is that stopping major crimes begins with stopping small ones. This theory has influenced policing strategies in many major U.S. cities since the 1980s. If in a neighborhood you find the windows are shattered or broken, it immediately gives you a narrative on that neighborhood. It's probably not a very safe place. It also shows that these people don't care much about many different things. Anything goes with these people. They start with small crimes, society gets used to them, accepts them, then they migrate to major crimes, and society gets intimidated and succumbs to them. Perhaps if we stop the small crime, both the perpetrators and society will ensure that a migration to more serious crimes is prevented. Often we see people urinating by the side of the road and think, oh well, maybe they don't just have access to a toilet, so let them just do their thing. Now I'm proposing a hypothesis I want to call the scratch car hypothesis. This hypothesis appears to be very predictive, and you can test it out yourself. Always and everywhere, if in a city many of the vehicles on the road are all scratched up, you can be sure there is reckless driving going on in that city, and there's disorder in practically everything happening there. Combating such nuisances may sound like a waste of resources when serious crime may be on the rise. According to my scratch car hypothesis and the broken window theory, fighting the seemingly minor indicators of neighborhood decay and disorder may be the key to solving major economic and social problems. The fact is that perceptions affect reality. Any visual cues that a community lacks social control can make the community a breeding ground for serious crime. Indeed, if people don't mind that their vehicles are scratched up, it probably shows that they feel a sense of powerlessness and resignation to crime, and most likely also to general insecurity. Accepting seemingly trivial crime is an indication to potential investors that serious crime is also taking place, and people are already subdued and intimidated into accepting it. By the way, investors include locals who also have the option to invest elsewhere. Still in view, electricity and competitiveness. But up next in our hidden economics, don't press them too hard, lest they cheat. A kid was doing very well on his quizzes and tests all semester long. This one day, the kid came home with a very bad score. The mother said, "Son, what happened? How come your score is so low?" The kid said, "Well, Mom, it's due to absence." The mom said, "Absence? But I've been taking you to school every day myself, personally. Were you playing hooky after I dropped you off?" Then the kid said to the mom, "It wasn't that type of absence." "Then what kind of absence was it?" the mom said. The kid said, "Well, Mom, the kid that usually sits to my right was absent on the day of the test. That's why." Constant cheating on tests by a kid is detrimental to both the kid and society, and it should be attended to very quickly. Many commentators are stressing that society has placed so much pressure on students to achieve that they are doing anything to live up to the expectations of parents and others. It appears, and in many cases, that we care more about the student passing the test than we do about her learning the material. Some smart students just don't know how to pass tests and soon get frustrated and drop out of school. This behavior can also cause them to drop right out of the labor market when down the road they cannot get employment. The problem is that there can be serious negative externality to dropping out of school and probably consequently out of the labor market. As I've said many times before, a smaller labor force participation rate can lead to a double whammy for society. First, real output is undermined. Second, the proportion of people who can become free radicals and worsen conflict and insecurity in society rises. So folks, it's critical that we work to identify and help kids that may cheat on tests and exams before they have to cheat in the larger society. Our hidden economics for you. Access to environmentally and socially sustainable energy is essential to economic growth and poverty reduction. Over 1.3 billion people are still without access to electricity worldwide. Almost all of these people live in developing countries. About 2.7 billion people use solid fuels like wood, charcoal, dung, other biomass, and coal for cooking and heating. Every year, fumes and smoke from open cooking fires kill about 1.6 million people, mostly women and children, from respiratory diseases. Africa faces acute energy challenges with the lowest electrification rate of all the regions at 26% of households. About 550 million people do not have access to electricity. Without access to energy services, the poor are deprived of the most basic economic opportunities needed to improve their standard of living. Climate change remains a critical concern. At present, more than 80% of the energy consumed comes from burning fossil fuels, which produces greenhouse gases that cause climate change. Population, technological and economic growth are expected to drive up overall energy demand by a third from now to the year 2030, with 90% of new demand in developing countries. How does Nigeria fare in all of this? Recently, we had Dr. Ransom Owen, the former and pioneer chairman and CEO of the Nigerian Electricity and Regulatory Commission, in our studio to turn the light on so we can better see the situation with electricity in Nigeria. Dr. Owen has an impressive resume given his strong academic credentials and extensive experience in the field of energy and electricity. Among his many degrees, he holds a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania in the United States of America. Please join me in my discussion with Dr. Ransom Owen. You were appointed the first chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NEC. Now, of course, that follows an extensive and impressive career in the United States. What was it like? What was the commission about? What do you think that you achieved at the commission?
Thank you very much for having me in your program. I really appreciate this opportunity. Straight to the question, the issue of regulating electricity began in 2005 with the passage of the Electricity Reform Act. We were brought in as a pioneer commissioners and I as the chairman of the commission. The main role for the Regulatory Commission was to set the market rules. How would we open the commercial space for private entities to come and participate to solve the power problem in Nigeria? And the key responsibility is to provide regulatory certainty such that investors will understand that the rules will not change if they commit to investing in the power sector. We also set up and came up with rules and regulations for those market participants as well as consumer protection, because electricity is supposed to be for everybody. And so we will regulate both the profits that can be made and make the investors more comfortable in coming to the sector.
Okay, so now I always wondered, especially when the act, as you said, started in 2005, that we are regulating electricity production, transmission, distribution, all of that. But people say that there's not much being produced in the first place, not much being transmitted, not much being distributed. So is it fair to say then what were you really regulating?
Thank you very much. I said there are two aspects of it. When we came, it was only PACN that was a monopoly that did the generation, transmission, and distribution as a market model. So the government wanted to unbundle the power sector. And in order to unbundle the separated generation. Generation even now is 100% deregulated and anybody can generate. While transmission is still a national asset, and I believe Manitoba Hydro has been selected as the right person to do the private management.
Sure.
The distribution entities remained a monopoly until very recently under privatization, where private sector now has been introduced to the sector. And we believe that the government should stay the course. This will allow private sector people to come in. So it's not about the quantity of electricity you have before you can start regulation.
Sure.
You must set up the condition precedent for you to have private sector
want to come in the first place.
So that was the key aspect of it.
Absolutely. And do you think that you achieved much doing that?
Indeed, I don't want to toot my own horn, but when we came in, there were no rules of the game. And so people didn't have any way to assess the marketplace. We believe that, and we still believe that now, that business may not be afraid of risk. But if they do not understand the risk, it will be difficult for them to mitigate the risk.
Absolutely.
So what we did was to set up those rules and regulations. If you want to be an independent power producer over 1 megawatt, as the law says, what do you have to do? You must show your financials. You must have a partner. You must have engineering.
And then we did not have this before 2005.
You did not have that in place.
But isn't that amazing that we didn't have it in place all this time?
Well, progress sometimes can be slow, especially in a nation like ours. But the good thing was that it got started.
So you believe that you could come to Nigeria and be able to transfer some of these ideas into the way that we do business in the electricity sector?
Yes.
And do you think that happened?
Yes. To me, knowledge is transferable.
Yes.
And you can leverage experience.
Yes.
Electricity is the same world over. In my practice in the United States, both from New Jersey to Pennsylvania to DC and Virginia, it was the same thing we were about to do. So when I was called upon and headhunted to come to Nigeria, it was very difficult to resist.
Yes.
Because I was basically trying to mimic that's my field.
Absolutely.
That's my blood. And so when we came in with about 7 hours, we now said, okay, how do you make a change with only the law given to you?
Yes.
I said, electricity business is the same the world over. There's no difference, except in our country we tend to change things in a manner that will not be working. So my experience, both academically, my background is also in energy management and policy.
You've actually done some teaching too.
Yes, all of it dealing with management or electricity. Yes. And in the trading industry in America, whether it's mercantile exchange, whether in gas or electricity, we part of the process that helped set it up.
Production or generation, transmission and distribution. Which one is the vexing issue in Nigeria? Which is that if you had to pick one, so this is where we really have to solve a problem. Which one? Or was it all three?
The most vexing one as of now is generation.
Okay.
Because that is what is the engine of power.
Because I hear sometimes that we're generating, but we don't have the capacity to do
no, well, you said
whatever.
To pick one. I'll pick generation.
Yes, okay.
But even if you come to the distribution end, which is the last mile to bring the power home,
yes,
a lot of transformers are not working. So even if electricity comes into a transformer, and the transformer is bad, everybody that's hooked up to that transformer does not have electricity.
Yes.
It's called denial of service for no fault of the customer. So the whole value chain has to be fixed. It's like building a bridge. If you build a bridge halfway into the river and let go, well, nobody's going to use it. So you might as well complete the whole thing, and then people will enjoy it.
Right.
So in my humble view, the whole three propositions have to work in hand in order for us to enjoy power.
Okay, let's complete the whole thing. What's the problem with providing electricity in Nigeria? What is because it's a problem.
It is
You know, we only have whatever it is that we have, whether it's 4,000 megawatts or whatever, but that's obviously not good enough. Everybody knows it's not good enough. What if somebody were to ask you again in 1 minute, they said, Dr. Owen, you are an expert in this area. You are a seasoned professional in this area. You've been around the world. You understand. You read this. You studied it. You've taught it. In 1 minute, why do we have the problem that we have with electricity supply in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. I'll try. But the main focus, if you ask me, is that issue of poor planning.
Yeah.
There is a word in English that says proper planning prevents poor performance. So if you do not plan properly, you will fail. And therein lies the crux of the issue.
We have not been planning since independence?
We have been planning, but there's many policy flip-flops, overturning of ideas.
Okay.
Continuity is lacking.
Yes.
These are long-term investment projects that are needed.
Yes.
So if I do not understand what might happen tomorrow to my investment, I'll be shy. Anytime there's uncertainty in the market, it freezes investment decision. And so especially in the power sector where there's tremendous investment requirement, both in all infrastructure of every kind, from metering, transmission, and bringing the power to the house. So if I'm going to invest for the long haul, that's why I say you cannot, it's not a trading issue that you can just get money.
Yes. Now, what about the time when the government was the only player on the field?
Yes.
So we weren't worried about IPPs at that time. What handicapped the government? What made them not to be able to provide? Because we didn't have, I mean, the plan, what did they not plan? What was there to plan that they didn't know how to plan? Or what truncated the continuity that they could have had?
You know, in Nigeria, we practice zero-based budgeting.
Yes.
Every 12 months, the budget has to be reset to zero. And then you apply anew for the following year. And if the government kept changing the budget, so if you wanted to do a power plant or a project that costs, you needed to go over 4 years of investment, and year one, the money is allocated, and year two, not enough money is allocated, then the project will slow down. So the government itself tried it for all these years, it did not succeed. It now said, let us change it from 2005, bring in private sector intervention. The government should stop crowding private sector out.
Yeah.
That's the
So
national
basically
objective.
the government was incompetent in the provision of power. I mean, we can say because we see the result.
It did not
we didn't
meet
have
the objective. That's it.
they
People
were
never felt the
government was
impact of
incompetent.
government.
That's what it is.
So the government has realized,
Yes.
okay, I couldn't do it alone,
Yes.
and they cannot do it alone.
Okay.
Let us bring private sector intervention.
Yes.
And this is the beginning of wisdom.
Well, that's
and I
good.
believe that privatization should stay the course, because it's one of the only choices we have in the power sector.
Now, with privatization, does that mean the government should be completely hands-off?
No. In fact, most of electricity around the world is provided by government.
Yes.
There's not necessarily the government cannot provide electricity efficiently. In China, in many, many places, the government still does it. Even in the United States, Tennessee Valley is owned by government. States own electricity. There's nothing wrong. You know, cooperatives do own electricity. So no, there should be a partnership between government and the private sector. There may be bigger projects in Nigeria, like large-scale hydro, like Mambila, where government may be the only one who can do it. But private sector in these days can put the equity and structure the financing to do it. So debt and equity can be got in the open market, and investors are prepared to do it. So I think that the key to continuity is to ensure that the marketplace is regulated and is pleasant and is a level playing
Predictable,
field.
yes.
Yes. If you cannot predict
Yes.
tomorrow, it's difficult for you to ask for money.
As the world struggles to recover from the recent global recession and financial crisis, countries are looking for solutions to improve domestic economic performance and put their people back to work. Global energy demand will keep prices relatively stable, and stable, reasonably priced energy is central to maintaining and improving the living standards of the people. In all this, what are the key energy issues for Africa? Let's look at three principal areas. 1, access and capacity. 2, reliability. And 3, costs. There is low access and insufficient capacity in Africa. Excluding South Africa, the entire installed generation capacity of sub-Saharan Africa is only 28 gigawatts, equivalent to that of Argentina alone. According to the African Development Bank, the entire installed generation capacity of the 48 sub-Saharan African countries is just 68 gigawatts, just about the equivalent of that of Spain alone. And as much as 1/4 of this capacity is unavailable because of aging plants and poor maintenance. In sub-Saharan Africa, just a little over 20% of households have access to electricity, compared to about 40% among other poorer countries. If current trends continue, fewer than 40% of African countries will reach universal access to electricity by 2050. In addition to low access and installed capacity, Africa has poor reliability of energy supply, as African manufacturing enterprises experience power outages on average 56 days per year, creating losses and poor global competitiveness. In terms of cost, power tariffs in most parts of the developing world fall in the range of $0.04 to $0.08 US per kilowatt hour. However, in sub-Saharan Africa, the average tariff is about $0.13 US per kilowatt hour. This burden further undermines Africa's competitiveness. Shortcomings in the power sector threaten Africa's long-term economic growth and competitiveness. The cost to the economy of load shedding is equivalent to about 2.1% of GDP on average annually. Per capita consumption of electricity in sub-Saharan Africa, excluding South Africa, averages only 124 kilowatt hours a year and is falling. The rate of consumption is barely 1% of that in high-income countries. If this consumption of electricity is allocated entirely to household lighting, it would hardly be enough to power one light bulb per person for 6 hours a day. Something dramatic and extraordinary must be done. To be globally competitive, we have to dedicate at least 1/4 of our extracted natural resources for the next decade at least to the provision of power. For Nigeria, if the capacity to produce more crude exists and the waste is stopped, membership in OPEC may have to be reviewed in order to produce additional crude, which should be dedicated to energy, roads, and education. I'm Magnus Pakol, and that's my view.